I'm Rip Esselstyn, and you're listening to the Plant Strong podcast. For over 30 years, Robert Cheeke has made a profound impact on the vegan and plant-based lifestyle, both as a champion bodybuilder and a New York Times best-selling author. Today, he gives us all the playbook on how to become a more impactful vegan. It's the name of his new book, and he's with us right after this message from Plant Strong. Hello, my Plant Strong cousins. I got to give a shout out for Plant Stock 2024. After a 4-year hiatus, we are bringing back our in-person event with all the Brock stars that you know and you love. Carly Bodrug, Mrs. Plant U, the social media sensation. We have Dr. Will Bolshewitz, Mr. Fiber Fueled. We have Dr. Gemma Newman, who's over from the UK. We have Dr. Dawn Musalem with the Mayo Clinic. We have John Mackey, who recently retired from Whole Food Market stores, where he was at the helm for 44 years. We have Doug Evans, who is Mr. Sprout. And of course, what would a Plant Stock be without Jane Esselstyn and her co-pilot in crime, Ann Kryl Esselstyn? You are going to have endless buffets of Plant Strong food. We're going to have more activities than you know what to do with, whether it's pickleball, yoga, hiking, walking, cornhole, frisbee golf, live music, dancing, stargazing. And of course, our in-person slots are filling up very, very fast. This event will also be virtual, so we will have an endless number of virtual slots available for people. Simply go to liveplantstrong.com, click on Plant Stock 2024, and sign up. I cannot wait to see you August 16th to the 18th in Black Mountain, North Carolina. Make it happen. Many of us want to become impactful in everything we do, especially for causes that are important to us. But many times, we have no clue where to begin, or we simply don't think that our contributions would be big enough to have a real impact. Well, I'm here to tell you that's simply not true, and there are always ways to be more impactful. Case in point, Robert Cheeke's latest book, The Impactful Vegan, How You Can Save More Lives and Make the Biggest Difference for Animals and the Planet, is a fabulous blueprint for how you and me and all of us can use our time, energy, skills, talents, resources to make the greatest impact on the lives of animals and the planet. Robert's been doing it now for over 30 years, and he is responsible for raising awareness and funds for the vegan movement, as well as converting thousands of people to the plant-based lifestyle. Yes, this book is about becoming a more impactful vegan, but the pages and the examples translate into anything that holds our hearts. Please welcome back to the Plant Strong podcast, Mr. Robert Cheeke. All righty, everybody. I am here with none other than Robert Cheeke. What's up, Robert?
Rip, thank you so much for having me. I guess I'll do that little flex early on. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me on the show. It's good to be back.
Well, it's great to have you back. For those that don't know, I had Robert on episode 91. Back when he and Matt Fraser wrote The Plant-Based Athlete, that was a New York Times bestseller, and you guys knocked it out of the park. But, I'm a little bit hurt, Robert, and let me tell you why.
Please.
So I just found out that you were in Dallas, like not too long ago, at Ben Bella, your publishing house for The Impactful Vegan that is hitting bookstores and Amazon and everywhere else, June 25th. And I found out that, where's the love? There was no text. There was no phone call saying, hey, Rip, I'm up in Dallas. Come visit.
Yeah, well, to the best of my knowledge, that's about a 3.5 hour, 4-hour trip. So I might as well be in another state.
But that's nothing when it comes to Robert Cheeke. I would make that at the drop of a hat.
Well, then we will try that for round 2. But also, I was signing books for 16 hours over the course of 2 days. And I just didn't get a chance to do much else except for eat some vegan food and hit the gym, which I did.
And so how is the elbow? How are the fingers? Did you get any calluses or any cuts from all that signing?
Yep. And part of that is understanding how hard to grip the pen. That's a big part of it. Sometimes I grip the pen too hard as I'm signing or as I'm writing something and try not to mess up. And I didn't mess up a single book. Well, a couple I had to change some words because I started to write the wrong word and had to save it. But I didn't ruin any books. But yeah, that's part of it. It wears on your fingers, and also the paper, touching that amount of paper, it pulls the skin off your fingers. So it was a task, but I think it's going to be very, very meaningful getting those signed advanced copies out, people like yourself. And I hope that's going to make a difference in people learning about the Impactful Vegan.
Well, okay. So that's what I want to do with you today on the podcast, the Plant Strong podcast, talk about the Impactful Vegan. But before we do, Robert, I just need to say that, you, as long as I've known you, and I think we first met in 2009, 2010, but you've always had such an insanely big heart, right? I mean, and you wear your heart on your sleeve. It is such a beautiful thing. And I love how supportive you are of everybody in the movement, right? You're there holding up their books. You're doing everything you can to promote everyone else. And so it's now time for people to give back to Robert Cheeke a little bit, show him the love that you so deserve with this book that you're bringing out into the world, The Impactful Vegan. How much time have you spent writing The Impactful Vegan, and why now?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for those kind words, Rip. And there's a reason behind it, why I support everybody else. And that's part of being an impactful vegan. That's part of using my skills and my talents and my resources and my network to amplify others. I mean, I don't write cookbooks, so I get behind those who do, like your sister and mom and Carly Bodrug and everybody else, Tony Akamoto, and give them the best opportunity to land on that bestseller list or make a splash or reach the 99%, reach the omnivores, change hearts and minds and menus and meal plans. That's what it's all about. I don't make foods, like you do with Plant Strong Foods, or like Dan does with Blue Zones. So I get behind that, right? I don't make protein powders, but James Wilkes does, and Brendan Brazier did. And I get behind that because that can help displace animal-based foods in the marketplace, consumer packaged goods, vegan restaurants. So that's why I get behind that stuff, because I know I can turn people onto it and I can reduce animal suffering as a result, which leads me to The Impactful Vegan. How long did I spend on it? 2.5 years, and I wrote more than 1,000 pages. We distilled it down into 270 or so. I actually thought it was going to be more like 350, but with the weight and the price and bringing in a 5th editor, we had a team of 5 editors. It was incredible. We really distilled it down into something that's super consumable and palatable and actionable. And I'm grateful for those additional edits. But wow, I've got a backup Word document with something like 600 pages in it, another document, and then 40 pages handwritten that never even made it onto a computer. Maybe it's good material. Who knows? It never even made it to the next step. It was a big project, Rip.
Yeah. So let's take a step back on Robert Cheeke's journey. So when and why did you personally become vegan?
Wednesday, December 8th, 1995 is the day that I became vegan as an experiment to support my older sister, who is vegan and into animal rights. We grew up on a farm. She organized this Animal Rights Week. I was going to fast food restaurants every day. I was eating my favorite food, which was eating chickens. I also liked bacon coming from pigs. And I decided, out of respect for my older sister, you know what, I'll be vegan for a week, whatever that means. And on that Wednesday, that fateful day, December 8th, back in the late 1900s, 1995, that was the day it all started. And you know what? You know why, Rip? I grew up on a farm. I raised animals. I used to bottle feed baby calves. before getting on the school bus and play with them after school. And then I sold them at the auction at the county fair to be turned into someone else's meal. And when I got exposed to more large scale, industrialized factory farming, animal testing through videos and through literature and through conversations with people, I decided, you know what, that's not what I want to get behind. That's not what I want to support. I want to spread compassion. I always have. I've always been this effective altruist, but decades before there was a name for it. I've always been an impactful vegan. That's why I got into fitness in the first place, was to combat the number one objection to veganism or a plant-based diet, that you can't get enough protein. So I achieved the American dream and put on 100 pounds. I was 120 pounds when I became vegan. And as you've seen throughout my career, I peaked at 220 pounds as a champion vegan bodybuilder. But it all started as a small kid growing up on a farm and wanting to make a difference in the lives of others.
Well, isn't that something? So would you say the primary reason why you decided to get into bodybuilding, why you wrote Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness, Shred It, even the Plant-Based Athlete, and you're referred to as the godfather of vegan bodybuilding, is it to basically bust that whole stereotype and show people that you can do this, eating plants, you can be vegan and be the manliest man that you can be?
Yeah, that's precisely why I did it, Rip. I mean, I was a 5-sport athlete in high school. I'm sure you were similar, involved in all kinds of sports until you found your best ones, swimming or whatever it was. Right. For you. For me, it was long distance running, a far cry from bodybuilding and building muscle. But I was a pretty good runner. I was a decent runner. And so I was a high school athlete wanting to show my other high school friends that I could do this, that I could build my body. I was on the number 1 ranked soccer team in the state of Oregon, on the varsity team. I then actually left that, even though we just won the state championship the year before I made the team. I left that team to run on the number 2 ranked cross country team in the state. Mostly just, I didn't get along. I didn't fit in as well. I wasn't cool enough to fit in with all the soccer players because they were the most popular people in school. And I ran on the cross country team where my friends were and where a few other fellow vegan athletes were. And we were the number 2 ranked team in the state. I went on to run cross country at Oregon State University for a year. And it was all to show that I could perform at a high level on a plant-based diet to help encourage those around me to reduce their animal product consumption. Now, this was largely, very much like you, Rip, before the internet, or before we had computers at home, or before we really knew what the internet was, and around 95, 96. And then as we got into more of this internet age, 2000, Y2K, 2001, that's when I embraced bodybuilding. And I actually started my website in 2002, veganbodybuilding.com, became a competitive bodybuilder right around that time, 2001, 2002, competed for a decade, won multiple bodybuilding competitions, and ended up on magazine covers, featured in Flex magazine and Natural Bodybuilding and Iron Man magazine, all these very heavy bodybuilding and sports-specific magazines, not just the vegan ones. And it was because of that desire. I wanted to reach the masses. That's what I've always tried to do. I failed a lot of times, and I've succeeded a few times, reaching the general public. And that's why I also wrote The Impactful Vegan, to show other people how to use their own skills and talents to reach the masses as well.
Well, you have done such a phenomenal job piecing together this book. And so what I'd love to do for the listener right now is I just want to grab little gems that you talk about from each chapter. And so hopefully what I can do here is kind of serve it up to you, and then we can talk about it. But I think just to get the ball rolling here, Robert, your first chapter, you basically, you throw out this term, effective vegan altruism, which is what inspired you to kind of write The Impactful Vegan. My question to you is, what is effective vegan altruism? Because I've never heard that term before, and I doubt that many of our listeners have.
Yeah, well, thanks, Rip. I actually added the word vegan to it. So the effective altruism is simply doing the most good for others. So it's maximizing our impact on reducing suffering. And this is very much aimed at reducing global poverty. So I first came across this from Peter Singer. in his book, The Most Good You Can Do. It's all about effective altruism, which again is maximizing our impact on reducing suffering. So not just doing some good, not just volunteering here and there, or not just donating without being mindful about it or paying close attention to it, but how can I use impartial and a scientific approach to measure the impact of my actions and therefore reduce suffering the most? For example, let's be really clear. One of the ways Peter Singer and others, William McCaskill, who co-founded Effective Altruism, talk about this is reducing suffering in sub-Saharan Africa, where it's just the scale of suffering is so large, where people may have to walk for 7 miles one way to get clean water and carry it on their head to get back to their family, where people go to bed at night not knowing if they're going to get bit by mosquitoes and contract malaria and die. And so they figure out, how can we help with this? So there's all kinds of ways to donate money to get mosquito bed nets to help prevent people, including children, from getting bit by mosquitoes and dying from malaria. There's ways to get clean water to those who don't have access to it. There's ways to get food to those who are part of the 1 billion people who are starving and don't know where their next meal is going to be. And they contrast all of this, Rip, with contributing to other causes like donating to museums, or the arts or theater, where only affluent people benefit who are already wealthy and have enriched lives. And it's not a life or death situation. Whereas poverty in parts of the world, 16-hour sweatshops in Southeast Asia, it's very common. In fact, just between the countries of, I believe it was Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, back in the 90s, 4 million people left working on these 16-hour farms out in the hot sun just so they could work in sweatshops in Thailand. I mean, there is suffering that is so much more extensive beyond the comfort of our luxurious lives here in the United States. And so I was really moved by that. You're right that for whatever reason, and I don't know where it comes from, Rip, when you introduced me, you talked about this heart, and I'm not saying that from an ego standpoint. It's like it's instilled in me that I have a moral responsibility to help others. If I am a privileged individual, which I am, a white heterosexual male born in the United States of America, to college-educated parents, raised in one of the safest and best cities in the world, Corvallis, Oregon, I have a moral obligation and responsibility to make someone else's life better. So when I came across Effective Altruism, which was doing the most good, maximizing our impact, I thought, you know what? I read 3 books on the subject and listened to a bunch of podcasts and such, and realized that, you know what? I want to do this same approach for animals, especially for farmed animals. 99% of animal suffering, actually 99.99% of animal suffering is in the food industry. How can we impact that? How can we change that? How can we maximize our impact on reducing suffering there? And that's what I explored in my 1,000 pages of writing, in my 40 or more interviews with world-renowned experts in veganism, animal rights, environmentalism, business, all kinds of stuff. And that's what we came to with the Impactful Vegan, based on these principles of effective altruism, of maximizing our positive impact.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Based upon all the things that you learned while writing this book that you probably didn't know before you wrote it, who out there, in your opinion, is doing it well?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rip. And I learned a lot. This book is not Robert Cheeke's ideas, like Robert's philosophy from his 30 years as a effective vegan altruist and impactful vegan and vegan athlete. There's some of that, of course, but this was learning from Bruce Friedrich, who runs the Good Food Institute, $50 million annual organization that works with governments throughout the world to advance alternative proteins and change the landscape of food production for the future. I learned a lot from Paul Shapiro, the Better Meat Company. I think you're familiar with them. Perhaps you've interviewed him. I'm not totally sure. I think so. But yeah, they're they're creating replacements through precision fermentation. They're creating replacements for animal-based meat and sparing hundreds of thousands of animal lives. I learned a lot from Vicky Bond.
Is that what Ron DeSantis has basically banned though in Florida? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that he's working on, objecting or banning, or I haven't followed in super close detail. Okay. But yeah, it's these alternative proteins, these cultivated meat products, these precision fermentation. But this is, as Paul has said many times, this is the natural evolution of technological advancements. Rip, I know you're out in Texas, but when you go down is it the 35 in Austin or Mopac? Why are you not doing that on horseback? It's not because you care a lot about horses and don't want them on the hot pavement and all this kind of stuff. It's because we invented bicycles and automobiles, and riding horseback for our primary mode of transportation, especially long distances, is obsolete. That's
yeah. Point heard.
So that's, I mean, Rip, you know this, the American public and the general public at large has communicated to us very clearly that they don't care where their meat comes from. Many of them know it comes from industrialized factory farms. They don't care. And so if their meat comes from precision fermentation, if their meat comes from cultivated meat, as long as it tastes good, it's cheap, and it's convenient, they're going to eat it. And that's what Bruce Friedrich is banking on. That's what many people I wrote about in the book are banking on. So who's doing this well? I think the Good Food Institute is doing it well. I think I was just about to mention Vicky Bond from the Humane League. She's the current president of the Humane League. They're able to spare an individual's life, a chicken's life, for as little as 33 cents. I think that's very impressive. I think they're doing it very, very well. I also think Faunalytics is doing it well. If you're not familiar, Faunalytics is the largest animal, animal rights or vegan or anything in that category, animal advocacy, largest database library in the world, maybe 5,000 or so research articles. You could get lost in there for months. And what they do is they listen. They listen to the people we're trying to reach, right? They listen to non-vegans. They listen to omnivores. They do studies and find out that what type of actions, what type of advocacy, what type of behavior most effectively influences people to change their dietary habits. I mean, I don't know about your spending habits, Rip, but I'm guessing you don't buy 6 belts per day or 6 wallets per day or 6 pairs of shoes per day, but you sure as heck sit down to eat 6 times per day, 3 standard meals and some snacks and grazing throughout the day. We all do. And so Faunalytics does research and conducts research and posts research and works with animal organizations, animal charity organizations throughout the world to better understand how to communicate with the 99% that we're trying to reach. So I think they're doing it well.
Yeah. So I like hooked on phonics. That's good. Hooked on phonics. We like that. Now I don't want you to give me a list of 20 people that are doing it well, because throughout this conversation we're having, I know you're going to drop different names of people that are doing it well. Okay. So, let's move on to chapter number 2. So you say when you find your why, you find your why, you find your way, which I love. But can you give me an example of that?
Yeah. I'm in my 29th year as a vegan athlete. I never forgot why I became vegan in the first place. I sat there in that chair in that auditorium, the Animal Rights Week at my high school, and I watched videos of factory farming, of animal testing, graphic type of footage, as well as liberation, footage of animals getting rescued and all of that. And I decided that's what I want to do with my life. I never forgot why I did that. I found my why. Why am I still in fairly good shape in my mid-40s, still hitting the gym last night for 90 minutes and in the hotel in Dallas yesterday at 6 a.m. before signing books and getting on a flight, and the day before that, and before that in Washington, D.C. at the Animal Rights Conference, the Animal Advocacy Summit, before hitting the all-day conference, getting the gym, because there's still that objection that vegans can't get enough protein, and it hasn't been put to rest yet, despite my efforts and despite your efforts and other people's efforts. And so I still need to carry that torch. I still need to challenge the status quo. And so I still need to show up day after day. So I know my why. I know what I'm doing. Why do I write books, Rip? Because I'm going to say this with no ego. I'm going to say this with a carefully crafted practice that I've been working on since I was in Carol Young's third grade class in 1988 at Lincoln Elementary School. I'm a damn good writer. I'm good, and I know that. I don't have my own podcast. I don't have my own products. I don't have my own all these other things, whatever it is, TV show, or I'm not musically inclined and all that, because I am a writer and I'm one of the best in the world at it. And that's what I do. Because my voice carries on the pages that I write. My book, you graciously mentioned, the Plant-Based Athlete, New York Times bestseller, #1 international bestseller, Publishers Weekly bestseller, translated into 9 languages worldwide. That is what I'm good at. That's my why. I found out at an early age where my talent lies. I think, like you, I'm very lucky to have a very talented father. My father, animal science professor at Oregon State University for more than 30 years. He wrote, I think, 15 textbooks or more on various subjects involving animal agriculture. I got some of that DNA to be a good writer from him.
Sure did.
And that's what I do. And I used to travel around the country. That's when I first met you 15 years ago, when you invited me to speak at Whole Foods Market. And I was sleeping in my car, traveling in my little Prius all over the country, hanging out outside a warehouse or parked in a parking lot at 24 Hour Fitness so I could use the bathroom, brush my teeth before reclining the seat and lying down there to go to rest. Because I knew, I connected the dots 15, 20 years ago, Rip. I knew I was going to be a best-selling author. I wrote about it in my journal back in the 90s. I described precisely what happened 15 years later, like even insane details that were very kind of eerie.
Yeah. What would you say? What would you say to somebody that's out there that is trying to find their why and doesn't know what their why is, that will help them find their way, especially when it comes to finding, maybe a piece of their heart that they didn't know was there, that will allow them to become a impactful vegan?
What makes you smile the biggest? What makes you, I don't want to be cliche here, but get out of bed in the morning excited to start your day. But let's get more nuanced. What warms your heart? I was in the gym last night listening to Shankar Vedantam, the Hidden Brain podcast, and I just had a genuine smile because the episode was about gratitude. And I'm just sitting there doing lat pull downs with a giant grin on my face, hearing someone else's story about gratitude. And that moves me. That gets me going. I was able to help someone out yesterday or 2 days ago, wherever it was, in Texas, who was a little bit down on their luck and needed some money for food. That warms me because I know I'm helping them. So find what that why is for you. Maybe you love numbers and you love math and you love data, or maybe you love music, or you love art, or you love this whatever craft it is. And if you don't know, Rip, ask some people around you, like for their observations about you, like what they think that you get most excited about, what they think that you are best at, and what they think that you love, because their observations might even be more accurate than your own.
Yeah. Sometimes others know as much or more about us than we do.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And one of the people you talk about in the book is Plant-Based on a Budget, Tony Akamoto, who I've had on the podcast, and how I think you're like, she found her why, and that really led her down the path.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, she worked for nonprofit animal rights organizations. She worked for animal sanctuaries. And she found her niche in there with Plant-Based on a Budget, making plant-based food accessible and affordable and teaching people in creative ways and amassing a following of, I think, across all platforms, between 1 and 2 million people. She found a way to make a living at it. She found a way to turn this hobby into a career. And most importantly, she was able to reach a lot of people. She was able to inspire a lot of people who don't identify as vegans or plant-based, but they found inspiration from that. And so what she did was she found her why of wanting to make a difference in the lives of animals. And you can do that, Rip. You could do that volunteering at a sanctuary. That's great. You can do that creating a consumer product good, some sort of plant-based ice cream, let's say, perhaps. You could do that in many, many ways. She decided to create intellectual property, a blog about it, and then expanded that to writing books, very, very popular cookbooks that are available in bookstores throughout the world. And that was also because she never forgot her why. It was her creation, her craft is an extension of her desire to help others. And I think I'm not just saying this, I'm saying it because you're right in front of me right now, because it's an example. I think that's why you changed Engine 2 in Austin, Texas to be Plant Strong, because you cared about your buddy's cholesterol levels and his health and his family and your other fellow firefighters, or else you wouldn't have done that, right? You wouldn't have taken the time or effort. You'd say, okay, you do you, I'm going to do me, best of luck with it. But you said, no, I know my why. And I'm guessing you got a lot of that from your parents. I know my why. I know my commitment to improving the health of people around me, and therefore improving the planet at large, improving the healthcare system, improving the lives of animals, including improving the environment and crops and land. But it started with knowing your why. And I think that naturally extended to creating food products and all of those types of things to reach a community. I believe there is altruistic reasons behind that. And so, you're an example too, but thank you for highlighting Tony. She's doing great work, as are so many others in our movement who really understand their why quite well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to move on to chapter 3, where you talk about basically using your strengths to help others. And I want to read this passage that you have. And it's actually a quote by Carrie McCarthy that I find to be really powerful. This is how you start out the chapter. Just being vegan is so useful in terms of society, because when you exercise that muscle of empathy towards a voiceless group, animals, it means that every time you sit down to eat a meal, you're forcing yourself to look beyond your own selfish wants out to the bigger picture. And as the wider world emerges to you, you can see that it's something worth your attention and something connected to what you do. Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And Rip, I created something called the Strong V. This is something that I think is perhaps one of the biggest foundations of the whole book, along with the undertones and underpinnings of effective altruism, or as I call it, effective vegan altruism, working to maximize our reduction of animal suffering. Strong V is just, I'll explain what it is in a moment. It is foundational, Rip. If you can identify these things, you can change the world around you. Let me tell you what I mean. I came up with this acronym Strong V to leverage our skills, talents, resources, other strengths, network, generosity, and volunteering to maximize our impact on others. Let me give you some examples of Strong V, Rip. I don't have a lot of money. In fact, I'm often unemployed contractor. I've sold a lot of books, and I do my touring and all that, but I just don't have, I'm not really built for the world of business. That's just not who I am. But within snapping of my fingers, I was able to raise $100,000 for the Game Changers, for example, because of my network, which is part of, that's the fifth letter in Strong V, because I'm connected with some celebrity friends, some wealthy people that I know. And within literally 30 seconds, send an email. Here's a little bit about the Game Changers back when they were still raising money, even before James Cameron put in his money. Yeah, I brought in 100,000 because of my network. Same thing. Years later, still in the same situation, where I don't have a lot of money, but I was invited to this gala event at this animal sanctuary that I'm quite fond of. Not just because they're local, not just because I have a bias towards them, but because I understand the great work that they do. Sometimes, Rip, getting 5,000 people in the general public to attend their farm in a single day for a fall festival or spring festival, interact with the animals, make donations, all that kind of stuff. So I could barely afford the $150 tickets for this gala event for me and my wife to go. But I wanted to go, so we did. But what I did before I went was I sent out a few emails. Didn't take me very long. And I requested for product donations for their silent auctions. Full-size tubs of protein powder and food and apparel and supplements and nutrition and coaching services and all that. And I contributed literally thousands and thousands of dollars to their fundraising when I didn't have it in my own wallet, but I had it within my network, within my resources, within my community, my connections. And we raised nearly $250,000 in 3 hours at that event for that sanctuary that's doing tremendous work. I give examples. I don't need to spoil them all, but I give examples of people using their website design skills to create powerful websites for animal charity organizations, which save those organizations tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. They would have had to hire someone else to do it when people volunteered their skills and talents. I talk about my friend who is a champion vegan powerlifter. He literally volunteers his physical strength to carry hay bales and buckets and all this stuff at animal sanctuaries. And it's also to recognize, Rip, that every single one of us has talents we're not aware of. We have skills, learned skills that we learned in school or through other ways, that whether it's a foreign language or filmmaking or something like that, we learned along the way that we just forgot that those could help animals. And we also have an incredible network. I mean, just think of the people who are in your phone right now. You have people who are who can work in construction. You have people who are managers. You've got people who are pretty wealthy, perhaps affluent. You've got people who are skilled laborers. You have people who can speak foreign languages and who can help translate programs into Spanish or German or French or some other thing to help advance a message. Our strong V is something that, if we can leverage and utilize for good, can make a tremendous impact on the world around us. And I'm very proud of the examples I give throughout the book of people who are doing that.
You actually talk about one gentleman in Sri Lanka, of all places, that was able to save 100,000 monkeys from basically being killed.
He was a monk in Sri Lanka. I was just talking about him 3 days ago with Bob Isaacson, the president of Dharma Voices for Animals, who was on that video FaceTime call with me, with that monk in Sri Lanka, where he was spaying and neutering dogs and cats at the same time. And he, because of his connections with Parliament, Rip, he's very well respected, this very well respected monk in his country. He said, no, not on my watch. We are not sending those 100,000 primates to China to be experimented on, which is where they were headed. They were headed to animal experiment laboratories. And he said, no, not on my watch. And he prevented that. Many of us can do that. I mentioned a bunch of politicians. In fact, I was just with Dennis Kucinich, who ran for president twice. I was with him just a few days ago, and his wife Elizabeth.
Yeah, used to be the mayor of Ohio or Cleveland.
Yeah, he's been a U.S. representative for decades, I think, and ran for president in 2004 and 2008, and he's running for U.S. House of Representatives again, as I believe, from what his wife just told me. Yeah. But there's other people too, whether it's Cory Booker or Dr. Amish Shah, who I just saw also in Washington, D.C. less than a week ago, who's passed the strongest laws protecting animals in the history of the state of Arizona. To many others. I don't want to spoil it, but there's others in the book too, where these are connections that, if we use that leverage to help animals, we can do tremendous good. And so I'm very pleased to be able to provide those examples of strong V for people to find out what your own strengths and talents are and how you can best utilize those for good.
Yeah. So let's move on to chapter 4. Let's say that we have financial resources and we want to do something with those financial resources. What are there any, how do we determine what charities do the best kind of work? Is there a way to audit and look at the data that charities are doing so that we know we're putting our money to a place that is being impactful?
Yeah, absolutely, Rip. And luckily, there have been organizations that have already done the legwork. They've already determined that. Animal Charity Evaluators is one of them, ACE. They've evaluated over 3,000 animal charities over the last 10 years. And they come out with their list every year of the top 4. And then they're on, maybe the next 8 or 10 honorable mentioned, or the second tier, then the third tier honorable mention. So they do this every single year, Animal Charity Evaluators. They were co-founded or inspired by William McCaskill, the co-founder of the Effective Altruism movement, way back 2012, I believe, or 2013. Maybe it's 2014. But anyway, they've been doing this for a decade or more. And so what they do is they look at all kinds of area of criteria. just like Joel Furman does with his Andy score. You know, the aggregate nutrient density index. He's got like 37, differentiating factors, like where you can measure the nitric oxide, the antioxidant, the fiber, the dietary cholesterol, vitamins, minerals, protein, whatever of a given food. Animal Charity Evaluators does that with these animal charity organizations. So what's their return on investment as far as how many animal lives are spared per dollar spent? What's their organizational structure like? Is it even a positive place to work? By interviewing members who work there and managers and all of that. To what degree do they feel they fill a void and work in areas that are often neglected by other organizations? How far does their money stretch? Do they work internationally? Where the US dollar stretches so much further. I mean, imagine, Rip, the power, I know you've done a lot of traveling, of the US dollar stretching to India and Bangladesh and Nepal and Sri Lanka and Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos. It's unbelievable. Or any country essentially on the continent of Africa and many parts of Central and South America. And so they have already done this work, and I did highlight. It's also part of the summary or the conclusion of the whole book, so I don't want to give it all away. But I will highlight one of those organizations, and that's the Humane League. They're doing some incredible work because, look at the cover of my book, Rip. We chose a hen on purpose. It takes about 150 to 200 individual animal lives, chicken lives, to create the same amount of edible meat as one cow. So almost 200 lives to one. And chickens are often overlooked. We don't care about them as much as we do dogs or cats or horses or even other animals, perhaps like goats. Yet they're slaughtered at the tune of 65 billion annually. I think over 9 billion or 23 billion right here in the US alone. And so the Humane League can spare chicken's life for as little as 33 cents. I mean, imagine that, what I like to call, or my friend gave me this name, unnecessary beverage that many of us are going to eat or drink later today. You know, this overpriced coffee, this energy drink that we don't need, the sugary beverage that it has more than our entire daily recommended allowance of sugar in one single beverage. Imagine if we just forego that just for a day, and we can spare 15 individual lives. And the same can be said about fish, who suffer in incredible ways to the tune of 1.3 trillion annually, shrimp and other and fish of all types. There are organizations, Rip, that have been in place for decades. They've done the trial and error. They've done the research. They have entire teams. Some have teams of hundreds of people. They're very skilled. They're very well-versed. They're very talented. They put people with the right talents in the right position to do the most good. That's so much more than you and I can do on our own. And I think maybe this is a good time to say this, Rip. And I want everyone to listen to this and absorb this and take it to heart. Just you and I living our plant-based or vegan lifestyles, however we wanted to define that or describe it, we're going to spare about 365 animal lives per year. It's one a day. It's pretty good. But I talk about in The Impactful Vegan how altering your behavior just a little bit could spare 135 times more animal lives, 16,000 in a year instead of 365, or even more than that. And that's by contributing to the most effective animal charities in the world, even if it's just a very small percent of your annual income. I already told you $5 will do, right? Save 15 lives, $5. Imagine if you have a monthly donation or you have a yearly donation when you're at the end of the year doing taxes and you recognize that there are many wealthy donors that double or triple a donation. They match it. This happens all the time during Giving Tuesday in the fall and winter and around the new year, right before the new year. And even I got an email from Vegan Outreach literally yesterday. They had a wealthy donor doubling or matching your donation. So this happens throughout the year. So the Humane League is just one of the organizations that I want to highlight. And guess what, Rip? They have been an Animal Charity Evaluators finalist as one of the top 4 effective and impactful organizations for 10 consecutive years, and now for an 11th year.
Who runs the Humane League, and where
Yeah,
are they
right
based
now, Vicky Bond, and their main offices are in California, but they're set up in other countries throughout the world. I don't remember all the countries off the top of my head, but they're mentioned in the book. And they're based. Vicky's based in California. You know what she said? And this goes back. This is beautiful about the Strong V, Rip. She was a veterinarian, and she was able to help one animal at a time. But by taking on a role with the Humane League and engaging with literally thousands of food companies and getting them to enact practices of getting animals out of cages, getting chickens out of cages, getting egg-laying hens out of cages, working with farmers to improve conditions or eliminate suffering as much as possible. The numbers are there in the book. It's unbelievable. She's been able to help, I think at this point, hundreds of millions of individual birds compared to just one at a time as a veterinarian, because she took a step back and realized as a doctor of veterinary care, as an influential and very persuasive individual from her credentials and her background, her experiences, she is able to persuade companies, food companies, farmers to enact different practices that are much more compassionate. That's an incredible story of using her inherent skills and talents that she's got to do more good.
Love that. Let's move on here. You talk, I think it's in chapter 6. You talk about like how important it is to lead by example and how your actions really make a big difference. And you talk about a gentleman named Earthling Ed. Let our listeners know, who is Earthling Ed and why is he in your book?
Earthling Ed, I was supposed to see him a few days ago, but he didn't make it to the event. Had to do a keynote speech via video. Earthling Ed is probably, he's considered the most powerful voice in kind of the vegan advocacy area right now. As far as vegan activists, he has a very calm and persuasive voice about very logically and reasonably adopting the tenets of veganism and living a more compassionate life. He's spoken at more than 1/3 of all universities in the UK. He has a course he teaches at Harvard. Listen to this, Rip. It's unbelievable. He has opened up multiple restaurants in the UK, in 2 different cities, in London and in Brighton, I believe. He co-founded an animal sanctuary. He's written 2 best-selling books. One is called This Is Vegan Propaganda, and the other one is How to Argue with a Meat Eater and Win Every Time. He has started a podcast. He has his hands in all kinds of things. He's an award-winning documentary filmmaker, a keynote speaker around the world. And are you ready for this? He's 29 years old. He has done so much in such a short time. And you know why it started? Because he was sitting there watching television, watching the BBC, and learned about a massive truck carrying 7,000 chickens that crashed on the highway out in the UK and killed 1,500 chickens on impact. Others had broken wings and legs and flesh hanging off their faces. And he felt empathy for them. He felt sad. And then he turned around and looked at it in his refrigerator, where he had a bunch of dead birds from KFC, his absolute favorite restaurant. They knew his order by heart when he walked in. And he realized for the first time that his actions were not in line with his feelings at that moment. And then he asked, there's a couple quotes in the book. These are direct quotes from Ed, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's something along the lines of, is their suffering worth, the brief sensory pleasure of my taste buds, or could I do better, or should I know better? And that's when he decided that he would not contribute to animal suffering anymore and would dedicate his life to animal advocacy. And I'll tell you something interesting, Rip. when I interviewed these 30 or 40 experts in the vegan world, a lot of people you and I both know and love, Gene Bauer and, dozens of others. Yeah. We'll leave it for the reader to get to explore some of these names and hear their stories. The name that came up more honestly, to be fair, more than everyone else combined was Earthling Ed. When people talked about those who are impactful, I asked people very directly, who in our movement is the most effective, the most impactful, and why is it, and all of that. And his name came up, much like, to give credit, your family, when you talk about whole food plant-based, it's Campbell and Esselstyn. It's Campbell and Esselstyn. You get some McDougall and Furman and Forks Over Knives and a few others in there, but it's Campbell and Esselstyn, really, on the Mount Rushmore. And you can argue who else joins that list. Gregor, Barnard, rock, paper, scissors at this point. But Campbell and Esselstyn are not. They're not moving from Mount Rushmore. They're there. They're there. They're not going anywhere. They're historically going to be there. Ornish, perhaps. Earthling Ed is on that Mount Rushmore right now, and he has been for years. And he's just been an effective debater and communicator on behalf of the voiceless who are suffering. And he's done tremendous work. And so I was honored to be able to write about him. And it all started because of this news story. It wasn't because he got in some argument or fight or debate with somebody. It wasn't, because of a meme on Facebook or, these could be the cases. And some of those things.
But that is my question to you is, I think that each and every one of us, Robert, most of us, I'd say 98% of us have big, compassionate hearts. We're kind people. And that is part of our values as empathetic human beings. But there is a huge disparity between, the love that's in our hearts and then how we eat. And I know that, there's Beyond Carnism, and there's been all kinds of stuff written about that, Melanie Joy. But what do you think could be the thing, or is it just an individual thing where Earthling Ed, it was seeing that on the BBC? Is there something that we could do to get everybody in one fell swoop to realize that the way you're eating is not in alignment with your values?
Rip, unfortunately, there's not. I wish there were. I wish there was one fell swoop approach. But as many people say, there's really the biggest objection to veganism is not the protein concern. It's not even the taste, cost, and convenience concern, in my opinion. And I think that perhaps the data suggests this. The biggest objection is I don't care. It's apathy. And that is our biggest obstacle. We have, it sounds like you got a follow up there.
Well, my thing was, and you use this quote in your book, and it's a Gene Bauer quote, which I really like, which is basically, if we can live well without killing others, why wouldn't we?
And it's mostly because people don't want to. They are fine with consuming fast food. 80% of Americans consume fast food once per week. 37% of Americans consume fast food once per day. 20% of Americans regularly consume a meal in their car, which again is indicative to typically fast food. I disagree with the notion, very famous quote, I think I mentioned in the book too, that if, maybe I stand alone here, I'm not sure, but I don't think so. I disagree with the quote that says, if slaughterhouses had glass walls, we would all be vegetarian. I'm just not so sure, because I think most people do know what it takes for a burger to be turned in, going from a cow to this edible thing here. And I think apathy is our biggest obstacle. Now, there are some approaches, and Faunalytics does a great job of explaining which approaches are good and better than others. So, for example, Rip, news stories and positive social media posts are more effective than disruptive protests, for example, because disruptive protests tend to turn people away. The 99% we're trying to reach. It's very empowering for those who are doing it, right? I'm a voice for the voiceless. I'm fighting for animals. I'm a liberator. I get that. It's almost self-serving. Like, I am doing my part and I feel empowered. by doing that, but how does that impact the 99%? I even wrote this down. I don't know where it is now. I wrote something down that I think is is a very, oh, there it is. Is the important question to answer. It states this, Rip. I put on a little Post-it note. It says, what actions help inspire omnivores to change their eating habits? I think that's what we have to answer. And so it's news stories, according to the data. It's 30-day challenges like Veganuary, where people are immersed into something and they get support. I mean, you have this too with your challenges. These I mean, the data suggests these are effective. These are even more effective. They're more effective than celebrities, because celebrities are never early adopters. They wait to determine what their audience is cares about before they take a stand on something. Billboards, obviously, not all that effective. You don't. Have you ever been driving down I-35, Rip, and you see a billboard and you're like, you know what? I'm going to change my entire worldview. The previous, 55 years or whatever that I've been thinking about this. That billboard just changed that moment. That 2 seconds on the freeway. It doesn't work that way. It might remind you that you're hungry and you go get that, 3 for $2 biscuits at whatever fast food restaurant. But you're not going to change your value system from a billboard. But you might from a book. Books are very impactful. Problem is they don't reach a lot of people, unfortunately. But a news story could reach a lot more people. Documentaries are fairly effective, not as effective as we might think, because a lot of people can tell that documentaries are highly biased. I mean, that's basically the point of documentaries. It's to share a certain perspective. So everyone knows, for the most part, documentaries are biased, and therefore the 99% is a little bit hesitant. Whereas a book could very well be biased as well, but it just comes across as more independently minded or authoritative on a particular subject. So I wish there was one fell swoop, Rip, but there really isn't right now, and it mostly comes down to eventually changing taste, cost, and convenience of food.
Yeah. Well, speaking of taste, cost, and convenience of food, you have the vegan career, and conscious capitalism for better business, and you have examples like Next Level Burger and Greener by Default. You mentioned Chef AJ. Why a chapter on the vegan career? I mean, I love it, but expand on why that made one of the chapters.
Rip, I think this is going to be the chapter that maybe raises the most eyebrows. It was a fun one to write because of, I think, partly my own experience and observations. I failed as an entrepreneur for 20 years, a budding entrepreneur, a attempted entrepreneur, a wannabe or a wannapreneur, I guess they're called. I was a wannapreneur, but I was terrible at it. Rip, I'm probably the worst when it comes to entrepreneurship. Maybe the worst.
You know what? Don't feel bad. It is not for everyone.
Well, and that's what I wrote about. I'm maybe the worst you've ever met. And the reason for that is because of these 3 words: know thyself. Know thyself. Mm-hmm. I have no interest, and this is nothing against those who do, but I have no interest in profits and profit margins and all this kind of stuff and making products, even though I know the strength of the more resources you have, the more good you can do. I'm just not built that way. I give everything away. I mean, you saw me when I was going on tour with all my vegan bodybuilding t-shirts and my self-published books. I just gave it away. I wanted to get the message out there. That is a horrible approach for an entrepreneur trying to build a sustainable business. It does not work. And I've tried for 20 years. I've tried working under various entrepreneurs, and I just didn't fit in. I'm one contract after another with companies, and it just doesn't work for me because I'm so inclined to just give everything away and introduce products to people who are currently consuming animals. And I know this can displace animals in their diet, and I know how that impacts supply and demand. I know how that impacts shelf space in a store, and the more popular an item is at Costco or Whole Foods or Kroger or Albertsons or the neighborhood store or airports. And so, I'm not built for it. And so it was fun for me to write that it's important for people to know that before you decide to, you're all inspired, I'm going to go out and start my own vegan business or even my own animal sanctuary, understand that 82% of first-time entrepreneurs are going to fail. Right out of the bat, 8 out of 9 of you, or out of 10 people, 8 or 9 of you are going to fail. Or out of 100, 82 of you, you're just not going to make it. The odds are dramatically stacked against you. And as it works in any kind of business, within the first year, 10% close down. The first 5 years, 50% are gone, right? 15 years, 75% are gone. And after that, it gets worse. That is just so people have a realistic approach. I mean, how many times have you met someone or even felt this way yourself, where maybe you watch a documentary, you go visit an animal sanctuary, and you say, man, I want to start my own. Like, I want to go start my own. That is one of the worst things you could do. And I love even if that little 3-second quote gets out there on the internet. Why? What's the context? Well, for starters, 82% are going to fail just off the bat. And most people don't know what they're getting themselves into. I talk to many farm animal sanctuary operators, founders, presidents, whatever, managers. And you're not, at an animal sanctuary, you're not housing and feeding animals. You're raising funds 24/7. You're watching animals die all the time because of natural causes or because of their injuries or conditions that brought them into the farm in the first place. You say goodbye to holidays, say goodbye to travel. You can't. It's not all doom and gloom. Yes, it's very hard to start a business. You have to have the right temperament. You have to have the right skills, you have talents, the right mentality. You have to be able to hire and fire people. You have to be able to manage people. You have to be able to make difficult decisions. You have to be able to take loans perhaps or partner with non-vegans and take their capital and use it. And you've got to, share responsibilities and all that. But as I wrote about, there's success stories, whether that's Next Level Burger or I guess Chef AJ, who created her own like individual entrepreneurship through her using her skills and talents to host a show and put on events and workshops and conferences and write books and all of that stuff.
She did. You know what? She really did do a great job utilizing all of her skills and her strengths to be an advocate for everything, that veganism stands for. What about Happy Cow? Did you talk to the Happy Cow people at all? And that app and what that's
I wrote
done?
about them briefly. I know Eric Brent. I've known him for 10 or 15 years. I thought about that, but Rip, there were 5 finalized, fully edited chapters that got cut from the book. And then, plus the hundreds of pages that never made it to a finalized chapter. There was more about Happy Cow. There was more about all kinds of vegan companies and individuals, their interviews that never made it into the book. I always thought maybe I would do a second book, but it's to be determined to see if people like this one first. I mean, I know it's the best book I've ever written by a landslide, by a large margin. It's the best book I've ever done. It's the most thoughtful. It's the most meaningful. It's the most impactful. But the audience is going to determine whether it's worthy of a second book or not. And that's not up to me. That's up to the market.
Right. Plant-based news.
Yeah.
Right. That they're an outfit over in the UK that's doing, really, really incredible work. Obviously Vega that our friend Brendan Brazier started.
Yep.
A long time ago.
Yep. I thought that was worthy of mention because they reinvented the plant-based sports nutrition category. That was back in 2003. And I started working with them in 2005. So I was intimately involved in that. I helped their products launch in the US and was with them for a decade. And they completely transformed grocery store shelves. I mean, they were the number one nutrition product in like Target and CVS and Walgreens of whey protein and everything. They really opened up doors for, now you've got all whether it's Complement or Sun Warrior or Orgain or Plant Fusion, Phyta. I mean, go down the list. Vega opened those doors, and I think we have to honor that, much like we do. We honor Nathan Pritikin, we honor Dean Ornish, we honor Caldwell B. Esselstyn Jr. and Dr. T. Colin Campbell, and we honor Brenda Davis and Dr. Michael Clapper and Chef AJ and those who were pioneers in this space. And I think it was important to tell that story. And of course, Plant-Based News is, I was with their co-founder, Robbie Lockie, 3 days ago. And he just flew back, I think, to the UK, and he just wrote me this morning that said he's loving the book. I mean, he read parts of it, but now he like has his own signed copy and can really dive in on a long flight. And he says just loving it. And that's that's what I hoped. And there are some great companies. And let me just finish on this topic with this, Rip. The punchline was that, and there's some great questions. I love the opening of that vegan career chapter, which gives you like literally an entire page of questions to answer. Is there really a need for you to create a new product? Is there how does it differentiate between what's already on the market? How can you use what's the current success stories on the market to predict your own success? What void do you fill? The punchline is, or can you use your skills and talents to join an entity that's already in existence, since we know that 8 or 9 out of 10 are going to fail anyway, that are brand new startups? Like, don't start your own animal sanctuary. Go join one that is already thriving and add your talents to that. Yeah, there you go. Right there, vegan career. And Pinky Cole, I just signed a book for her yesterday, or 2 days ago. And she shared a story on Instagram that I posted. She shared that last night. So anyway, Rip, there's hope for a vegan career. You just have to be very, very specific and deliberate and have the right temperament in order to make it happen.
Let's talk about reaching the right audience. You have a whole chapter on reaching the right audience, whether it's young, whether it's Black, whether different demographics. What would you like to say about that?
First, I'd like to say that you are not your audience. It's a quote I got from Tobias Leinart from his book that's in like 10 languages. It's something about creating a vegan world, something like that. Sorry, Tobias, for getting the the exact name misplaced, although I do have the book sitting around here somewhere. But understand that you are not your audience. It is important, because sometimes we say, hey, this worked for me. Come on, Rip. I was inspired by black and white videos back in the late 1900s to stop contributing to animal experimentation. That's not going to work for everybody. Just because it worked on you, it's not going to work for most people. And that's why we have to listen. We have to observe. We have to understand the statistics, the data, the demographics, and the evidence. So I spell it out in the book. I'll give a few spoilers here. Who buys most food for a family?
The man.
It's women. Women are buying 80% of groceries for a household. Most of us know that. But that should be top of mind. Women make 70 to 80% of the meals. They buy over 80%, and then they prepare over 70% of the meals for an entire household. And that is something we have to pay attention to, that women are so much more likely to be compassionate. And I make some kind of attempted humor in the book, about some sort of, perhaps some biological flaw that men have, where we just love hunting, killing, grilling, sizzling dead carcasses. I don't know what it is about us, Rip, but we like doing that. But women are more likely to be compassionate. They're more likely to be caring. They're more likely to be those that make the meals for their families, and to be purchasing the foods. And therefore, we should aim a lot of our efforts towards reaching women. And who are the most likely groups to change their worldview? Well, they're kind of two groups as far as age demographics. They're young people, like when I was in high school, or those in college, who are just discovering who you are and what your value system is, what you care about, what kind of legacy you want to leave in the world, or indelible mark you want to have on those around you. Young, inquisitive, teenage and college age students are a great demographic to reach. That's why Vegan Outreach spent all those years distributing information, literature on college campuses, and providing vegan foods on college campuses. That's why Earthling Ed and myself and many others have spent years touring college campuses, having philosophical conversations or enlightening discussions with those who are open. It's also, and I think you know this well, it's also an older demographic who says, you know what, I need to change the course of the trajectory of my health for the remaining 20 years or whatever that I've got. I've had a lifelong habit of eating animals, and now all of a sudden I've got the health issues. I've got the obesity. I've got the diabetes. I've got heart disease. I've got clogging of arteries. I have hypertension. I have all of these things, and now I'm looking to change my diet so I can fill in the blank, and it gets overused, but so I can, play with my grandkids, or so I can, enjoy my golden years, or I can enjoy retirement a little bit more. I can feel more comfortable when I travel at maybe a lower body weight, or whatever the case is. I just want to have more energy. I don't want to be stuck in this body that is hard to move, or where I feel sick. And so yeah, there's women are going to be most likely to become vegan or open to these ideas. Younger people in their teens and 20s, typically, and then an older audience, 60s, 70s, 80s, perhaps. And then, as you mentioned, the Black community in the United States. The African American community is the fastest growing vegan community, fastest growing demographic in the country. And
why is that in your research?
I talked to a number of people about that, including Will Tucker. He's in his early 50s, Black American man, vegan for between 1 and 2 decades now. And I learned a lot about that. And a lot of it has to do with representation. For a long time, let's be honest, it was kind of a white male or vegan hippie movement for a long time. And that's just the way it's been. We're not pointing fingers or anything like that. We're just saying it's, for the most part, it's a lot of white men as far as the doctors and influencers and entrepreneurs and people that demographic. And then there's kind of the white, maybe female hippie movement from the 60s, 70s, 80s, popularizing this vegetarian lifestyle, these vegan ideals. And so there wasn't a lot of representation in the Black community. Sure, there was Dick Gregory. There were Jim Morris. There were more contemporary Tracy McWhirter, who's been doing this for decades. Bryant Terry, John Sally, all these people. A lot of rap and hip hop artists. I mentioned a bunch of them in the book. But for the most part, it's been smaller representation. But now, when you look at the most popular vegan festivals in the world, or at least in America, many of them are put on by people of color. The vegan street fairs and big vegan parties and festivals. You look at some of the popular names, Tabitha Brown and Pinky Cole and others. There's for the Black community, they're saying, oh, there's people I can identify with a little bit more. They know my struggle. They know my lifestyle. They know my background. Will Tucker talked about that. There's even an event called Black Veg Fest. Veg Fest are historically very white. That's just the nature of the demographics of our community in the United States. But there's even one called Black Veg Fest. And Will described this in this conversation with me of just being on stage and just looking out at the audience and just understanding that, like, that's a demographic that knows his struggle, to find his place in the vegan movement, where he's a little bit of an outsider just because of his race or because of the color of his skin or because he has not historically had lots of representation. And to realize that those people could now be inspired by him, it was powerful. Like, I loved it. I loved it. And Pinky Cole said the same thing. It's representation. It's making veganism cool and hip and accessible and far-reaching and inclusive to a different demographic who was often left out. And John Sally talked about how everybody, his grandparents, growing up in the South, and everybody had gardens back then. It was very common for Black Americans to be raising their own food and be gardeners and cultivating and creating their own plant-based crops and, collard greens and I don't know, beets and all these other greens. It was very common. It's very popular. And now we're just kind of getting back to our roots, so to speak. And the Black vegan community is on the rise, largely because of representation, because of influential people in the movement who are who are entrepreneurs or musicians or artists or authors or television hosts or people who reach a wide audience, and it welcomes other people who can just identify with them a little bit easier just based on their cultural heritage and their background and even how they feel in their own skin with someone who looks like them. Representation I don't think can be overlooked. I think it's very important. And so that's part of what's growing the vegan community within the Black community. And I think it's a beautiful thing, and it's so exciting to see these very successful entrepreneurs like Pinky Cole and Tabitha Brown as just two standout people that I wrote about in the book that are really taking veganism into the next stratosphere, and it's lovely to see.
Yeah. Let's wrap this up with the last chapter, which is so great. You talk about don't let the perfection be the enemy of the good, and choose your hard, which I love. Choose your hard, right? Because it's so true. So, like maybe for starters, I think everybody knows, what don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. A lot of times that can set us up for failure, especially when it comes to eating this way, right? And if you cheat, it's like, oh, I can't do it, I'm going to throw in the towel, right? But what do you mean when you say that in regards to being an impactful vegan?
What I mean by that, Rip, is that for years, and I'm actually talking, and I'm kind of embarrassed to admit, it's probably a couple decades or more, I was obsessed with being the perfect vegan. I went through times where I couldn't eat at a restaurant like Chipotle or a place that makes burritos if the person wearing gloves had just touched some cheese or something else, then was touching my food. I wouldn't eat it, even if I had to pay for it, I'd give it to someone else. I couldn't sit in a car that had leather seats. I was just too uncomfortable doing so. I would be difficult at a lot of restaurants if there was cross-contamination, which does not refer to any additional animal suffering. It's just my own personal bias or kind of being grossed out by it, which then made veganism look difficult and challenging for those around me. I even remember people getting frustrated with me as I'm asking the staff all these questions, and not that you shouldn't ask those questions, but I had so many barriers that didn't actually shine veganism in this very bright light. It made it look very difficult and challenging. And all the while, Rip, I thought I was making this incredible difference. I wasn't making any difference whatsoever, because slight cross-contamination or slight, using a leather basketball at a recreation hall or at a gym, I'm not buying it. I'm not paying for it. Just like, when I'm renting a car, I'm one of thousands of people who sit in that car. I'm not creating more supply and demand for leather interiors, if that's what it is, or whatever the objection is. I have this entire section about it, where again I try to bring some humor back into it in that particular section about don't sweat the small stuff. It's the big picture stuff that matters. Don't sweat the small stuff. If your pillows have feathers in them at a certain hotel, like, you don't need to haul your pillow from home with you. Don't get a stiff neck about it. I had a lot of those kind of like puns, and I think it's kind of funny. I had a lot of funny ones in there, but that's what I mean. That sometimes and also it's not sustainable. You're more likely to burn out. You're more likely to be part of that recidivism group of, I don't even want to mention the percentage. It's higher than we'd like, of people who leave veganism because it's too difficult to be perfect all the time and have a perfect reputation and have everything be as absolute, blissful, and perfect as possible. We don't live in that kind of world. There's cruelty all around us, from the cars we drive and the bugs we smash into, to the transportation and the damage it does to the environment, to growing of crops on large scale that harvest, and grind up a bunch of animals in the process, to our food choices, or even animal byproducts that are in things like car tires or common things that we have. Like, it's very difficult. I had a quote that it didn't make it. It made it to like 4 rounds or through 4 different editors. Then it finally got taken out. But I had a quote that, like, the Janes tried this for millennia. It doesn't work. They're known. I actually spoke at a Jain conference. They're a nonviolent religious group that's even known for wearing like a mesh wiring over their mouths that they don't accidentally inhale a fly or a bug. And they stare at every single square centimeter on the sidewalks. They don't step on anything. It's this obsessive compulsive disorder. I'm not saying that about their religion. I'm saying that about our human behavior, that it doesn't change the outcome in any measurable way to be obsessed with perfection. And in fact, it means we're more likely to lead to burnout and to even leaving veganism behind and living a easier lifestyle. Dr. Clapper had some beautiful quotes in the book about that, about people just tire. These are his words. They just tire of being the odd one out. They just tire of being ridiculed. Every family gathering is a hassle. They just get fatigued and burned out. And I'm even talking the way that Dr. Clapper describes it. He has that way of drawing it out. It's so difficult. And they just decide to leave veganism behind. If all you had to do was say, you know what, I'm doing the best that I can. I care a whole lot and I'm trying to be mindful. But if there's a sliver of cheese that ended up on my otherwise completely plant-based burrito, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. It's even okay to eat that sliver if by accident or if it's right there, because that doesn't equate to any additional animal suffering. It just happened to be there. And not sweat the small stuff and focus on the stuff that makes the biggest difference around you, which is ultimately what being an impactful vegan is all about.
Yeah. Yeah. What about choosing your heart?
Yeah. I learned this actually. It's a popular quote, but I learned it for the first time from Leif Arneson, the CEO and co-founder of the Vegan Gym. And I worked with them for 7 months and had a good time and learned a lot. And it's this popular quote that says there's lots of choose your hard scenarios. Like marriage is hard, divorce is hard, choose your hard.
Yeah.
Right. Not being very fit is hard. Being fit is hard. Choose your hard. There's so many. Working for yourself is hard. Working for someone else is hard. Choose your hard. There's so many of these choose your hard scenarios that one way is hard and so is the other. And you just have to recognize that the road is difficult. Animal liberation is hard. And doing nothing is also hard because of what you have to absorb in your own self-reflection of that you're contributing to something perhaps bad by not doing something. Yet the pursuit of animal liberation is also very, very hard and painful. But are you just going to sit on the fence or are you going to do something about it? That's hard. Being trust me, I've been there more times than I'd like. Being broke is hard. Being financially responsible is also hard. Choose your hard. And I chose to not be fiscally or financially responsible. It was too difficult for me to wrap my head around it. And I had to deal with the hard reality of being broke and not having resources. And so that really resonated with me, this whole choose your hard message. And man, Rip, writing a book is hard. But not telling the story was also hard. And so I chose to do it, even though it's long nights, long days right here in this basement, just sitting down here by myself, just trying to get through it. But every day we have the opportunity to choose our hard. We take one path instead of the other. And every day we have that privilege and that opportunity. And the road is difficult. The road is long. It's winding. It's full of speed bumps, like you admitted in your 23 years of creating food products and building a business and managing people. It's a windy, bumpy road, and many people who came before us have worked to pave that road, to lessen those bumps, to make it a little bit more passable. And we have the opportunity to do the same right now. We can say, you know what? This matters to me. I care about this. I know my why. I know the impact that I can have on the lives of others. I know I have some gifts. I know I have some talents. I know if I deploy those gifts and talents and skills in the right way, that I can save lives, human and non-human animal alike. And I have the opportunity every day that I wake up to choose my heart. The 1,440 minutes I have every day, I'm going to dedicate some of those to making hard decisions that are going to benefit the lives of others. And that's what I'm committed to doing. And that's ultimately what being an impactful vegan is answering that call where there's billions of lives at stake. There's very real suffering outside, just outside the borders of the comforts that we live in right now, just outside the comforts of our own lifestyle. There's an untold amount of suffering that's happening that's out of sight and out of mind. I'm just asking people to bring that into your consciousness, bring that into your awareness, and to let that linger and marinate in your heart and in your mind, and have that be your fuel to determine what actions you take for others, and let that motivate and inspire you to do something. And the Impactful Vegan shows you how to do the best things to help others.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Robert. In keeping with your big magnanimous heart, with every sale of a book, you're going to be giving a vegan meal to a hungry child in a developing world. Why'd you decide to do it? I love it, but why did you decide to do that?
Yeah. I met Paul Rodney Turner, the founder of Food for Life Global, which is now Food Yoga International, I believe. They just changed their name like literally a few weeks ago. But it was Food for Life Global for 40 years, so I'll refer to it as it's mentioned in the book. And what they do is Paul co-founded it more than 40 years ago. He's also a guy, big heart, big desire to help others. And what they do is they provide grants to people and organizations and groups in 65 developing countries, and provide them the financial resources to create plant-based meals that are in that cuisine that's native to that area of the world. If it's in Kenya, it'll be different. If it's in Colombia, it'd be different. If it's in India versus Morocco, and all down the line. And so they're able, through these grants that are typically anywhere from only $500 to $20,000, because of, as I mentioned earlier, how far the US dollar stretches in these developing parts of the world, they can create entire vegan meals, hearty vegan meals for starving children who might otherwise not eat that day. They can create that meal for less than 50 cents per meal. They already, I mean, this is just astounding. They provide 1 million vegan meals per day, and they've already dispensed something like 8.7 billion plant-based meals over the last 40 years to those who are hungry in the developing world. And so it's a way to help animals. It's a way to help humans. It's a way to help believe in something positive and provide aid for those who need it. And it's something that I'm committed to doing, even as someone who doesn't have a lot of my own money. I set aside the proceeds from this book, The Impactful Vegan, to contribute to actually 5 organizations, which makes the book itself a form of utility and a form of effective vegan altruism in and of itself. And Food for Life Global is just one of those organizations. The rest are listed in the conclusion of the book. And so you find out where I've decided, after all this work on this book and learning from all these different people, where I've decided to allocate the proceeds of the book to go in the most impactful way. But thank you for asking about my relationship with Food for Life Global and why I care about doing that.
The Impactful Vegan. Oh, there she blows right here. I'm going to show it as soon as that thing. Well, that's going to be up there for a while. There you are.
Yeah, there it is. We both got it.
There. Impactful Vegan, how you can save more lives and make the biggest difference for animals and the planet. Robert Cheeke. Robert, thank you so much for joining me on the Plant Strong podcast. Everybody, find it in your heart to be the most impactful vegan that you can be. You got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And Robert, thanks for giving us the roadmap.
Thank you, Rip. I appreciate the opportunity the platform. And I want to thank you for everything that you do. You are an impactful vegan with your actions, with your words, with your connections, and with your audience, and with your platform like this, where you invite people like me to come on and talk about this topic. So I'm grateful for you, and I thank you for all you do for others.
All right. Robert Cheeke, give me a virtual fist bump on the way out. Plant strong, my man. Boom. All right. See you down the road.
Thanks, Rip.
Robert's heart and authenticity shine through. Robert has supported this movement for over 3 decades, so let's do our part and support him in his latest book release. It's one way that we can all become more impactful vegans. The Impactful Vegan comes out June 25th, and I'll be sure to put a link in the show notes on how you can order. Thanks, as always, for listening and sharing this and all of our episodes of the Plant Strong podcast. I am so grateful for your support, time, and positive feedback. Stay impactful, and of course, always, always keep it plant strong. See you next week. The Plant Strong podcast team includes Carrie Barrett, Lori Kordowich, and Amy Mackey. If you like what you hear, do us a favor and share the show with your friends and loved ones. You can always leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And while you're there, make sure to hit that follow button so that you never miss an episode. As always, this and every episode is dedicated to my parents, Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn Jr. and Ann Cryle Esselstyn. Thanks so much for listening.